city or the county on my ability as an entertainer. I'm glad to do it when it seems appropriate, but I don't pretend that that's the answer for balancing the budget or for improving health care. Excuse me while I adjust my clicks. Chris moved. I'm so happy to hear him articulating, promoting that he moved from Loveland into the city. And he's right. He is unusual. He is unique in that respect. And one of the reasons why I have such regard for him from the beginning of meeting him and knowing that story. I hope that you tell that story when you go to Blue Ash and Anderson and Green Township, because you're exactly right. You should promote that you did that and that you're doing it. I went one step further. I came all the way in to the heart of the city. And although Winton Place is a wonderful place to live, it's a charming village, and it is good to have new energy there, like Chris's. And I grew up in a neighborhood similar to Winton Place in terms of its age and its proximity to downtown Hyde Park. And but I felt a similar call when it was time to go out into the big world of raising a family and being a more deliberate part of the community. And I worked downtown when I was a kid. I worked at the old St. Mary's Hospital over by Union Terminal. There may be 2 or 3 people here that remember that hospital. And I went to high school across the street at the old St. X. In fact, this is our 50th anniversary. I was in the last class, the last graduating class. I did not graduate from St. X, but I was in that class of 1960. The last graduating class from 7th and Sycamore, next to St. X Church. It's where the parking lot is now. And the challenge that I'm proposing to my class this weekend is that our class's legacy is that we put a new building back at 7th and Sycamore instead of that parking lot. And with all due and proper respect to my friends the Jesuits who are making a lot of money off that parking lot, a lot of where I'm coming from is to see mistakes like that, or shall we say omissions like that, corrected. And with the experience, the vision I've had, and I think the ability to articulate planning development needs like that, that programs like that are a focus for me of taking unused or less used or improperly used locations in real estate and turning them either back into something more productive as they were at one time, or turning them into something more productive for the first time. Just in case, maybe I could just in case you're wondering what this is all about, I've never done this before. But as I was leaving to come here, I always wear something, because I've got a collection of buttons, and I usually pick buttons that I think tell a story. Not just that are pretty, but tell a story usually about the history of the city. And when I started looking for that perfect button, I realized that so many of the buttons that are in the box are illustrate where I'm coming from, what I've done, or what I want to do, or the story that I want to tell. St. Paul's is a 5-minute walk from here on Reading Road, where the Verdon Bell Company is. Was about to be torn down, was about to be sold to a parking lot next door, and the church, 1848, one of the more grand edifices in the city, religious or otherwise. The Perry's house, where Senator Pendleton grew up and created in the legislature in Washington the Civil Service Act, the Pendleton Act. That would be gone. The boys' school, the girls' school, the convent, etc. The bingo was not making money anymore, so the church had closed it. The archdiocese had closed it down. It was totally vacant. I didn't think that was a very good idea. I thought it would have another life sometime, so I made a deal with the Archbishop Bernardin at the time to move in and kind of play pastor for a couple of years to buy time for those buildings with the clear understanding on my part that they would have another life. Well, those buildings, there are somewhere in the order of a dozen businesses in those buildings, and they're employing well over 100 people and paying taxes. And probably, follow the magic ball, probably the bingo will come back. If you know where St. Paul's is relative to the casino, wouldn't be surprised that there'll be a bingo game at St. Paul's again sometime. Excuse me. Music Hall, this is the Elks Convention. If you had the National Elks Convention in your city 100 years ago, it meant you were a big deal. It meant you were a big city. We used to get the National Elks Convention at Music Hall all the time. This is the National Elks Convention in 1905. And this image here is not the Eiffel Tower, not the Empire State Building, but the fountain on Fountain Square. To give you an idea, this is on their national badge. To give you an idea of what the world thought, or at least America thought of Cincinnati a scant 100 years ago. It was the biggest deal. And I wear this because I'm on the Society for the Preservation of Music Hall, and I serve on that board for all the obvious reasons. The Cincinnati Dance, not the Cincinnati Dancing Pig, but the Big Pig gig is something that I promoted when I was on city council for the city of Cincinnati. It's now one of the more stellar foot races in the country. This is the handicap treehouse at Mount Airy Forest, which was something that I promoted when I was on council through the Cincinnati Park Board. Particularly poignant for me because I worked at Mount Airy Forest when I was 16 and 17 years old in the Arboretum. And if you go out there now, you'll see really a resplendent garden in the Arboretum. When I started there, it was an overgrown mess. I don't take credit for that. Ron, my boss, the horticulturist, it was his vision, but I pulled the weeds.